Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. Dallas, your topic today is called When to Take Advice.
Thanks, Michael. This has been a very long work in progress for me, this concept of taking advice for a number of reasons. I've always been a contrarian and never wanted to actually do what I was told. And then obviously in the last 10 years in my work as a financial advisor, the hint is in the name, a big part of what you're doing is giving people advice. And then I think there's also a component where, and we've touched on this before, as I get further into my career and more experience, you start to realize that there are limits to how much we can know about someone's situation and what is going to be best for them. And so it's actually I read a really interesting book recently called Wild Problems, and it talks about some of the biggest issues or biggest decisions to make in your life, and the fact that they are sort of not made or unable to be made using standard economic metrics. You know, for example, who do I marry? You know, where do I live? You know, what do I do for a career? We can take advice in some of these situations, but sometimes the advice that you get is actually, not only is it not useful, it can be actively harmful. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this, as I often do, staring off into space, just recently, about when to think for yourself and when to take advice. And I've got three actually really good examples to touch on here. So the first one is that, and feel free to jump in and interrupt me anytime, but the first one is for our oldest child, Winston. We had him at daycare, and then we moved him into a kindy. Now, the kindy that we sent him to ultimately wasn't a good fit for him. After 3 months, we tried, and what we found was, and we only realised in hindsight, we'd just sort of gone along with. We'd talked to a couple of people. They said, "Oh, this is a good kindy. Oh yeah, great. We'll send our kid there." After 3 months, we realised we were sort of a bit annoyed at ourselves, because we know, obviously, as you do with your kid, we know him better than anyone. As soon as I walked into that kindy on the first day, it was way too loud, it was way too full on, there was kids everywhere, it was a bit chaotic. Some kids thrive in that environment. He didn't like it. And I should have known that. And so it was kind of those things where you go, that's an example for me of where I've taken advice. We've raised the issue, we're going to send him to kindy. Someone has said, really well-meaning, hey, my kid goes to this kindy, they love it, you should go there. And our instinct is to go, okay, great, that's an easy decision to make. Someone's told me that, I'll go and do it. So we sent him that kindy. Now we're going back through the process of where will we send him to kindy next year. And we're now approaching it with a much different attitude, which is that thing of, okay, let's start with the end in mind. We know him. We know what we're trying to achieve for him. We know what he will suit and won't suit. Let's now go and try and find something that fits in with that, rather than go and seek advice out. So we're still seeking advice. We're still asking people about their experiences at these places, but you're asking them more detailed questions to get the information that you need, rather than asking for straight out advice. And the same thing is happening at the moment with our house. We bought a house, as long-term listeners to the podcast will know, we bought a house about 9 months ago. Went and had looked at it. Yep, okay, great. Bought it, and now 9 months on, we've gone, it's actually not a great fit for us at this stage of our life with our kids. If anyone's listening to this and they want to buy a house for a bargain price in sunny old Townsville, feel free to look on realestate.com. because it's relative. It would be really cheap relative to Sydney or Melbourne, those sorts of things. But it's again an example where we were looking at something that only we could know what we actually really wanted in a house, and what we're looking for, and what's going to be important to us and what's not important to us. And yet it's sort of easier sometimes to just go, well, this person knows about houses. They've said it's a good house. I should just, I'll just go along with their advice. And so there are times where what we actually needed to do in both those situations is we needed to spend more time and energy thinking for ourselves and less time taking advice. So that's a situation where, that's the downside of taking advice. The last example I've got here is is when to take advice. I took my car in for a service a little while ago to a mechanic that Nicola's family's been using for 30 years. Very trustworthy, very reliable. I've been using them for 6-7 years. They do a fantastic job. They ring me, 3 hours later to say, yep, we've serviced the car. We've found, and this is one of those ones where I'm not mechanical at all. We found a thing on your power steer. I can't even remember what it was. It was a link on your thing. We've worked out, how this, and he's, how mechanics do this. And he's telling me this is everything that's wrong with it. I've thought about this. I've tried to do this option, and I'm just thinking, mate, just take care of it. So he's going, okay, we've well it up. It didn't cost any money or anything like that. It was just a thing that, if at that point in time I would have gone, no, I'm going to decide what I'm going to do about the power steering link in my car, that would have been absolute madness, because that was a perfect time when I should be taking advice. He's the expert. I trust him completely. I know he's going to do the right thing by me, and I just want the car fixed. So those three examples to me got me thinking about give me some clarity on when things to look for as to whether you should or shouldn't take advice. So these were the three sort of gates that I came up with, is that you should definitely be taking advice if you meet the following criteria. Number one, if you have less expertise than the person that you're talking to. So in the example there of the mechanic, he's got way more expertise than me because I know nothing about cars. So that's a situation to take advice. When I'm talking about my own child with someone else who has their child, they don't know my kid. They know a kid, but they don't have more expertise than me in that situation. So that's a situation where maybe don't take advice. We'll be a bit more discerning about that. The second criteria is you don't have any extra information. So again, when he looks at the power steering thing in the car, I didn't even notice it. It wasn't like I knew something about the way that performed or handled or sounded or anything like that he didn't know. I didn't have any extra information about it at all. So my input into that, or my extra knowledge and my extra information, isn't going to be useful at all. And then the third sort of criteria is that if how you feel about it doesn't matter. And so they're the examples I use there again of the power steering versus the house thing. How you feel about your house, or how you feel in your house, or what your emotional experience is of living in that house, that is to some degree one of the most important things about that decision. Whereas how you feel about your power steering on your car doesn't matter. That's just a physics problem. It doesn't matter how you feel about whether it should be fixed or not fixed. It's just a black and white thing. So that is a very long-winded way, and I'll tie it back into how that actually relates to financial planning. But does that sort of make sense as a bit of a rant that I've just gone on there, mate?
No, it does. And look, if I could add 1B, so the point that you said for point one, was, I think it was if you have less expertise, the part that I'd add, and if you don't ever want to take the time and energy to have that expertise. So a lot of our clients, in fact, probably the best fit clients that we have, we say are experts in their own field. Now, that means they're making a lot of money out of being a great plumber, a great builder, a great management consultant, whatever that is, a great dentist,
cattle farmer, anything,
cattle farmer, engineer, whatever. So they don't have the want, or the energy to become skilled in what we do. Just as we don't have the want or energy to become skilled in what they do. So look, that to me is an addition to part one. And the other thing that I'd add to that, as an overlay for all of that, what springs to mind is that it should be a sliding scale. You should be taking advice when the stakes are really high. So the examples that you used, the kidney scenario and the house scenario, the stakes are higher than the power steering on your car.
Yeah.
Because
well, that's a great example, because if the mechanic had said, hey, my advice is you need to go and buy a $40,000 new car, then all of a sudden the stakes are higher. So then I might go and get a second opinion, or I might do some research, or I might actually put more energy into that. Whereas when the stakes are relatively low, it's just easy to go, okay, whatever's easy. You just don't have to think too much about it. You just do whatever's easiest. So, yeah, I think so. I guess that's why I break it down to those three areas. Trying to think about as it relates to us giving clients advice, and when to be more or less confident about whether our advice is right. And so there are some areas of retirement planning or financial planning where we have more expertise. It's just by its nature. We do this day in, day out. So where we have far more expertise is in things like, this is superannuation legislation. It just is. I know this stuff like the back of my hand. I do it day in, day out. I know what the rules are. We're talking about historical long-term average returns of different asset classes. I just know more about this than my clients. So if we're talking about that, I can be 100% confident that, maybe not 100, but I can be very, very, very confident that I have far more expertise than them in that area, because that's what I do, and I know that they wouldn't have, as you say, had the desire to spend that time and energy thinking about it. So if we're thinking about something or talking about something that is it's an area where I am the expert, that's when I should be more confident about my advice. If the minute we get into, and we've had this before with different clients, where once clients go, hey, what do you think about this? My mate's come to me with this pre-IPO investment option, investment opportunity, or my bank has asked whether I should refinance with this. We're getting into the limits there of what I'm very confident that I have expertise in. So we have to be aware of what is the limits of our knowledge, and the same thing applies with people listening to this. Is that when you're taking advice from someone, if they're an expert in every area, they're an expert in no area. Someone who tells you this is how the superannuation rules work, and this is what you should do about that specky mining company, and also this is how you should approach your marriage, and this is what you should eat to be healthy, and this is how you should exercise. You go, if they're saying everything with the same level of confidence, they probably don't actually know anything about anything.
And we all know some of those people.
Oh yeah.
And I always say those people are half right about everything.
Exactly right. Yeah, just enough to be dangerous, just enough to sound good, and to go, he sounded really confident the way he said that. So, and there's nothing wrong with having strong opinions. One of my favourite sayings about myself is that I have strong opinions loosely held. So I go, you should do this. And I go, but just to clarify, I don't actually, I'm not too attached to that idea. So that's to me that expertise there is be careful about what is it that I'm actually getting advice about, and is this person an expert in that specific thing? The part of having extra information, we're mindful of not jumping to conclusions with new clients who come in, where you get information in advance, and it's a constant battle against your own overconfidence and hubris, where you go, I've had 500 of these meetings like this. There's a lot of pattern recognition. There's a lot of, I've seen a lot of these, but often you force yourself to dig a bit deeper and to really ask a lot more questions. You can get a lot more information out of people. And you think, well, if I hadn't dug into that and found out that extra bit of information, that, I find that that's a thing that is often pays dividends to make sure that have I done what I need to do to get the extra information from this person? And again, conversely, for the person who's receiving advice, if they're going, this person's saying this really confidently to me, but they haven't even asked me about X, Y, Z. Well, I know that I've got this other information that they don't have, and so they can't possibly be giving me great advice without, if it's like an iceberg where they can see the top bit but they can't see the 9/10 that's underwater, it's probably not going to be good advice. So, and then that third bit about how you feel about it doesn't matter. Is that there's a lot of advice where, going back to that wild problems theory of, if you're looking at a problem where you go, it's just black and white, I just want the power steering to work. It doesn't matter how I feel about that. It doesn't have any bearing on that. we're really mindful of this, and we've talked about this before, where what we're really good at is financial planning and giving people advice about money. Now, when it comes to life coaching or your marriage or your kids or, how to, live a fulfilling retirement, all the rest of it, we know that those are issues that need to be solved, and we know that that's a thing that people need to work through. But it's probably we're not positioned to really dig into those things, because how they feel about that really matters. Whereas someone who says to me, yeah, well, I don't like superannuation, or I don't like shares, I go, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you feel about that. That is black and white. That's not about how you feel. But if you say, I really want to continue to work throughout my retirement, that gives me a great sense of purpose. Well, that's really important for you to know, and for you to think about how you feel about those things. And what I think about it matters a lot less. Does that sort of make any sense at all?
It does.
Fantastic. I'm always scared when I go, I've thought a lot about this. I've got these 3 rules of thumb, and then I'm going to come in, you're going to blow it out of the water and go, no, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
No, I've added all I can add.
Beautiful.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. For more information and resources, visit the Money Over 50 website, mo50.com.au. We look forward to catching up again soon.